There's something that watched Elaine and Colin. I watched something. Colin has been mentioned, and hmm, Colin has been mentioned. Hmm, not really,
Well, it's an important topic that hasn't been written about. A
something like
private museum holding artifacts, grisly stuff, bone fragments, etc., that he had gathered in the mountains. And so this was the kind of
so. There
dark,
was there was Colin
somber
mentioned here.
environment that Dr. Kelly
You want to
grew
speak
up
about
in,
first of all?
and his mother, who was also a McGlashan,
You want to
was
speak first.
one of the first, she was quite accomplished, one of the first practicing attorneys in California.
Bring
But
yourself
she
over
also was
Colin.
of a dark disposition. So Douglas,
Dirty.
as he grew up, very intelligent, but inclined toward dark contemplations. And I think
So
maybe this is what led him into
the dark.
psychiatry after brain surgery didn't pan out.
Mm,
So Kelly was the kind of very smart person who liked to let others know how smart he was throughout his life. And so he loved to debate. I think his interest
okay.
in magic was an outgrowth of this because stage magic is not just, as Dr. Kelly said, deceiving the eye, it's deceiving the mind as well. And it allows the magician to have a mastery
It's not.
over the audience and to actually influence what the audience is thinking. So all of those are wrapped together in this complicated, dark, um, accomplished, bright personality that became Dr. Douglas Kelly, ending up in Nuremberg.
So you mentioned some grisly artifacts in this
That's what
museum that McGlashan kept, and they included, I think, in your book you mentioned a toe bone from one of the children or one of the people that may have been eaten, for example. So there were no holds barred in terms of what this guy was fascinated in keeping or collecting. And I do think that's really interesting in terms of the legacy or the background or the ancestry of Kelly himself, the psychiatrist. He comes from a background of people who do bizarre things, really, in terms of collecting grisly artifacts, going that far. What are your thoughts about that bit?
Well, it not only do bizarre things, but have passionate, bizarre interests and obsessions. And Kelly, Kelly's obsession, as he grew up and advanced in psychiatry, was to try and figure people out, to try and understand people. That's one of the reasons why he was so attracted in the beginning in the mid to late 1930s in the Rorschach test, which was quite common at that time, popular evaluative tool for understanding
illegal.
how people are thinking. And it involved showing subjects these cards that had printed on them ink blot images, so they were not representational at all, abstract images, and asking the subject to tell what he or she sees. And it's a projection, Kelly believed, and all of his colleagues believed, of what was going on in the subject's mind. And Kelly became quite well known as a skilled interpreter of Rorschach results. Nowadays, as you know, the Rorschach is not used in that way and not used probably much at all in psychiatry practice. But at that time, it was important and was actually used to diagnose psychiatric illnesses, and that's how Kelly used it.
Yes, this test you refer to is a series of ambiguous ink blot pictures. People will ask what they think is going on in the picture, and you analyze and interpret from what they say, because they project, because the picture isn't really of anything. So if you say I see two people talking, that's a projection from yourself. onto the picture. So the psychoanalytic theory, which was very fashionable at the time Dr. Kelly was operating, but is not so fashionable now, said this revealed the unconscious. So people were hiding stuff or wouldn't talk in ordinary conversation about stuff, but you got at the unconscious through this Rorschach test. What's interesting is that although it's deeply unfashionable and most patients going to see a psychiatrist will not be presented with ambiguous ink blots anymore and be asked, what do you see in this picture? It still features a lot in Hollywood movies, right? It's still the case that over and over again, and as a psychiatrist, I always groan loudly in the cinema when the Rorschach is wheeled out. So it's quite a good plot device. We'll come back to that because I think he fancied himself in terms of this high IQ background and his ability to interpret this test better than anyone else. And we'll come back to that. But I want to focus on this bit that's missing from the film, which is why it's so valuable talking to you. The background to Kelly, knowing that he was recruited into a high IQ study, means he carries with himself, I want to suggest, a certain arrogance, right? And also an expectation that he's going to be brighter than practically anyone he meets. And what becomes really interesting in the film is adversarial relationship between him and Goring. Goring's second in command also would have fancied himself, right, as, you know, after Hitler died, as the top man in Germany. So he fancied himself. So you've got a really interesting adversarial position between two men who really fancy themselves as the brightest people on the planet. And who wins in this fight? What are your thoughts about that and the fact that it is missing from the film? And I think, therefore, they're missing a key angle. But over to you. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's important also to point out that one of the first things Dr. Kelly did when he was among the Nazi defendants was to measure their IQ. And so he gave all of them IQ tests. And Hermann Goering, who was among the 22 prisoners, was elated that he scored very close to the top of his colleagues. He scored with an IQ of 138. And that's high. And in fact, all of the defendants scored above average. I think the lowest was Julius Streicher, who scored 106. And this interest and pride and intelligence and arrogance all points to one of the things that drew Kelly to Hermann Goering and vice versa, I believe, which is that they were similar men in many respects, that both intelligent, both very confident, that both believed they were right most of the time, and maybe most important for the purposes of the movie, both manipulative in how they handled each other. So when I have discussed this meeting of
Going back to
Goering and Kelly with
going back
Dr.
to
Kelly's son, we
Goring.
always refer to it as King Kong versus Godzilla because it was these two massive personalities in collision. And that is probably more prominent in my book than it is in the movie Nuremberg, where Rami Malek, playing Dr. Kelly, plays him as somewhat less confident, I think, than Dr. Kelly is in my book, The Nazi and the Psychiatrist. But anyway, it was a face-off and a contest, and but also a genuine meeting of minds in the sense that they both had something the other wanted, and they both essentially got what they wanted from the other.
So I just want to focus on this bit for a bit longer because it is missing from the film, and I think it's so interesting. These two people are meeting. There's a lot of apparatus around them. There's a prison. There's the American soldiers, personnel. There's the senior people who hired Kelly. Also, you've got all the Nazis around Goring. These two people, though, think they're the two brightest people in the complex that's surrounding them, right? So I think that's crucial in terms of their understanding. And so in a way, as well, because they think they're brighter than everyone else, they're drawn to each other because they want to talk to the brightest people on the planet. And these two people are the two brightest people, in their opinion, of who's surrounding them in terms of all the people around them. But what do you think?
They're drawn to each other, and part of that mechanic is that they're also bored. Goering has nothing to do in prison, the same as all of his co-defendants. It's a very unstimulating environment. And Kelly would have little to do also if he hadn't set up for himself a project which went beyond what the court was asking him to do. The court was asking him simply to evaluate these men to determine whether they met the low legal standard.
Low legal standard. Low legal standard.